So hi, Meditations in Mastery audience, KMMA students. I'm sorry it's been so long since I've done a podcast. You'll be happy to know that I've been super busy with super good things. It's all been to do with the growth and mission at the dojo. But I have been remiss in doing my weekly podcast, so I apologize for that. But I do have a little bit of a makeup for you because I have an amazing guest today. I'm very excited to introduce. And he is a KMMA student. In fact, he's a KMMA student who will be testing for his black belt, his probationary black belt here in September, along with his kids. And but there's a lot of other interesting things in Robert Carpenter, who is my guest today. And in fact, it was in talking to him personally a couple of weeks ago that I asked that we would do a podcast one day. And it's because at Krav Maga Martial Arts, I teach certain lessons and certain attributes that are keys to becoming a black belt leader. And one of those lessons is that life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to what happens. And, probably two of the most important black belt attributes that we also develop in black belt leaders on that path and journey is positive mental attitude and perseverance, because these are things that not only prepare someone to pass a black belt test, but prepare one for the trials and tribulations of life. And Bob's gone through a few of those, so we're going to talk to some of that today. We're going to let him talk about what he's going through, about applying those principles and lessons in his life. And we are going to do as we always do and try to learn from his experience. So Bob, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And second, I want to start a ways back. I guess it would probably be about 3 years ago now, as you're about to test for your probationary black belt. So, and that's when I met you and you guys came into the dojo, because one of the first things that impressed me and has continued to impress me for all this time is your leadership with Ava and Aiden, because for our audience, Ava and Aiden, you have raised up like your kids since they were little bitty kids,
Yes,
but in reality, they're your kids. So at an age where all of us are pretty much done raising kids, you had to go back and do that.
yes.
So maybe you'd like to speak a little bit to that.
Well, I guess it was 10 years ago. Well, Ava's 13 now. And when she was born, she was our first, she was our second grandchild, I believe, first or second, I don't remember which. But her parents weren't, they were loving parents, but they really weren't meant to be parents, I don't think. They didn't have the parental instincts, and they have issues, as we all do. We all have our own issues and our own demons that we have to go through. Some of us do it in better ways than others, and they just didn't handle them quite properly. But Ava, from the time she was born, she spent a lot of weekends with us, and we knew her very well. When she was 2, her parents split. And her dad wound up moving out to Kansas, which we took temporary custody of her at that point. And the reason we did the temporary custody was we didn't want to take her away in case the time came where they could, or one of them could actually take and raise her. But we still had the authority to do everything we needed, including insurance, any medical, dental, we had full control as well. Now they wound up getting back together and having Aiden. And we met Aiden once before we actually took him for his first birthday. And then at 16 months, we wound up taking him in as well and taking temporary custody of him. A few years after that, we wound up adopting both of them. So they are legally our children, but they are technically our grandchildren. So they have mom and dad and grandma and grandpa on one bundle.
Well, I mean, and that's outstanding. And certainly the story without, like you didn't go into the details in the backstory, and there was no reason to, and that's great. But the point is, you saw a need and you stepped up and you filled it. I'm sure that it wasn't easy. So that in and of itself is admirable. You've been raising the kids for about a decade now then.
Yes.
And about 3 years ago, you stepped into my school with the kids.
Yes, we did.
Tell me a little bit about what made you decide to do that, and maybe even a little bit about the experience.
Well, we had actually gone to Vallarta's restaurant, and one of your promoters at that time, I cannot remember his name. He's no longer with you, though. He had a booth out there, and we stopped to talk to him. And we signed up, and we asked about coming in and when would be a good time to come in. He said, well, come in any Saturday. We do Saturday classes, family classes. I think they were a half hour at that point. And he said, just come on in, come in, see if you like it, how you do. So we were actually only interested in getting Aiden in because we wanted him to get some physical activity and be active. So we went there. Sensei Robert was there that day. And Aiden would not go out on the floor without me. So Sensei Robert said, well, if he won't come out by himself, he might come out with you. So I went out on the floor with him. So we spent a few Saturdays doing that. And Ava at the time wanted nothing to do with it. But she went with us a couple of times and sat and watched, and eventually went out on the floor just to try it out. And from that point, she loved it. And this was, I believe it was June in 2018 is when we started. And we signed up for the family plan, of course. First, we signed up for a year after I decided to, because I was a little bit later starting, just because of my work schedule and trying to get planning in and get everything set up for me to actually get in and be a participant. But at that point, all three of us started going, and we've been going regular ever since. As you know, we, even during the COVID period where everything was shut down and you had to shut your doors, unfortunately, you stepped up in a major way, in a brilliant way, and went virtual with all of your classes. And we never missed a beat. We were there for almost every virtual class. And as soon as you reopened your doors, we were one of the first people back in on the floor. And we really appreciated that. And we really appreciated you stepping up to make sure that your students got what they needed. And I'm sure there was a lot of back planning in that as well, and a lot of rush to get everything set up quickly so that you could keep a good client base, those that were willing to stay. Because as you say, there's a lot of people that will find an excuse to quit.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people at that point did find an excuse to quit.
Yeah.
Because I noticed.
Well, I'm super grateful for, that you guys did stick through all of that. Because you're right. I mean, we for that brief moment in time, we lost about half of the existing student body. But, some of those have come back. And more importantly, more than the ones that we've lost have come on you.
Right.
But what I wanted to, and quite frankly, I believe that we have an even better program than one of those people left, way better. And part of it is, the leadership development has always been a big piece to me, as you know,
Yes.
in addition to the self-defense and the rest. But as for the same reason that I had you on as a guest today, we'll get into that soon, is the same topic. That is why I believe we're even better. That period of time was a test, trials and tribulations. Like I said, obviously our student body cut in half, so did our revenue. So we had a choice. We had a choice of shutting it down like a lot of our peers did, or doubling down and making something happen. And so thank you for recognizing that. But Bob, what I would like to ask you next about, and maybe you answer both for yourself and then for the kids as two separate answers.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, in the 3 years on your way to, like I said, next month, September 26th, you're testing for your probationary black belt.
Yes, sir.
In those 3 years, tell me about some of the benefits, the things that you most appreciate about what you've developed on your way to becoming a black belt leader and the kids.
Well, when I started, I had just quit smoking after 40 plus years of being a smoker. So I actually quit June 8th of 2018.
That's awesome.
So the first several months, I had a real hard time with the physical activities. So I was stopping quite frequently just to catch my breath. And so as far as physicality, it has helped me immensely. One of the things I noticed first off was my endurance went up. I was able to do more. I was able to participate more. My physical strength increased as well as my agility, and my flexibility has definitely increased. There's been several benefits. I actually went off of my cholesterol medicine during that period of time because of the physical activity, and my cholesterol levels went down. So I was able to get off that medication.
Awesome.
As far as the kids, I think it's brought the kids and I a bit closer in some ways. It's a little bit separated in others because Ava's now a teenager, and teenage girls are not always a lot of fun. It can be a very big challenge. But I've also noticed them a lot as far as their outlook, I think, on life has changed a bit. They are more respectful most of the time, not always, of course, but they are kids. And I think they enjoy going. They enjoy getting there, seeing the people that they know, meeting new people. Ava absolutely adores the little kids. And she would be really good, I think, is being in there as a leader for the
Ninja.
the little ninjas. So, but she just adores the kids.
That's great.
And Aiden, he's kind of at a point where he's a little awkward right now, I think.
However, one of the things that, I mean, the other day when I called him to walk around and pick up all the attendance cards, and then I had him come up and do something from the front of the class. I mean, Aiden, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said it, we couldn't even get him on the floor at first.
Right.
He lacked confidence so much. He was so timid and so shy. And now, relatively speaking, he's pretty confident. Obviously, we're not done. By the time he's a second degree black belt, he'll be a truly competent and confident, black belt leader. But he can get up and do the creed. He can, go meet everybody individually and pick up those cards when I ask him to.
Yes.
He would have wrecked in the, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I remember a time when you had tried to call him up to do something, and he just absolutely would not do it at all. In fact, he had a little meltdown on the floor, and you had to talk with him about, he's at a level now where that's not to be expected, and he needs to try to contain that and control it. And since that time, I've seen a huge improvement in him, and his confidence level is through the roof, especially at the dojo. And I've seen him improve in a lot of other ways at the dojo. His intensity is increased. He wants that black belt. He wants that provisionary black belt. So he's going to do whatever it takes to get it.
I agree. And just because, as I hear you speak, obviously the illusion is you're alluding to the fact that he doesn't always show the same things as well outside as he does in the dojo. And just so you know, that's a little normal too. It's the law of the process, right? Like the dojo, the improvements in the dojo, whether we're talking about a white belt or even at this stage, are a little ahead of being able to take it, what I call, out of the dojo and into the world. The out of the dojo and into the world is just a step behind. But I think that if you haven't, and I'm sure you have also seen it in school and such, the improvements, but I'm saying you'll see it much, much more. And in both Ava too. I mean, in Ava, it's confidence, but also I think attitude.
Yes.
She's like, and ironically, once again, I know you said, of course, she's still got a teenage attitude at home with you sometimes, but here, she's changed so much, and so that's progress.
Yes.
And quite frankly, she's actually getting really physically good at her self-defense skills, which is also, like, I would say in this last year in phase 3, she's made exponential growth in her actual ability to defend herself.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And we've noticed it in her strength and in her abilities as well. She does get a bit goofy. And sometimes I think she does that because she's shy about her abilities.
Yeah.
And just trying to break her out of that. But she has some physical issues as well. She's ADD, ADHD, so she does take medication for that.
Yeah.
And if we don't give her booster pills before we come to the dojo, sometimes it shows.
Well, but again, I've seen so much improvement, and that's the important thing. It's like we always talk about a couple of things, right? The law of the process, excellence happens daily, but not in a day.
Right.
And and the other piece is that's why the third rule that I ask in the class: did you learn something new or make something better? Because one part is the technical learning, but the other part is becoming better every time. And I think that they're doing that. I think you're doing it too, Bob. And as I alluded to in my introduction, it's specifically your positive attitude and your perseverance, and you're still showing up to classes in spite of, quite frankly, you alluded earlier that some people use very small things as an excuse for quitting.
Right.
You have a very big thing that nobody would have blamed you had you quit. And that's true. Even I would not have blamed you. But on the flip side of the same coin, I have been awed and proud of, and I've spotlighted you a few times at the classes about it, and I wrote the blog on you about it, but I just wanted to have you on this podcast because I think you're leading by example on what a black belt leader should do when faced with trials and tribulations. Or quite frankly, I speak to black belt leaders because obviously that's the community I seek to lead and build.
Right.
But we have lots of people listening to this. So I think everybody listening, wherever they are, whatever walk of life, whether they're ever going to step into my dojo or not, can get great education, edification, wisdom. If you'll share a little bit about what continues to drive you to be who you are, keep the good attitude, do what you do in spite of what you're going through. And of course, you'll have to share what you're going through. I purposely have been vague.
Yeah.
Because I want you to do most of the talking.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. Actually, I did sit out about almost close to 2 months. Not quite. Earlier this year, Barbara and I both contracted COVID. And we were diagnosed, and actually on April 1st, on April Fool's Day, they told us we had COVID. And it was very shortly after that when I started having some major gastrointestinal issues. I spent about a week in bed. We actually called EMS to come out because I thought I was going to have to be admitted to the hospital at that point. They took my vitals, said everything looked good. If I went to the hospital, he said probably what they're going to do is give you a little bit of treatment, send you home, tell you to go see your doctor. So I didn't go. I wound up going to see a gastrointestinal doctor, had a colonoscopy and an upper GI done, which she really didn't diagnose anything at that point. 10 days after that, I wound up in the ER at Wesley Chapel, where they drew blood work. They did a CT scan. They noticed a blockage in my stomach. There were a couple of my lab indicators on my lab work that were quite critical. One of them was my calcium level was very elevated. And even knowing that and knowing that it could possibly be fatal, they discharged me and told me to see my gastro doctor and my regular doctor. 3 days later, I was only getting worse. On the 15th, I went to the hospital at Tampa, what used to be the University Hospital. They drew blood work as well. They looked at what I had already had done. And before they even had me a room back in the ER, they were already setting me up for admittance into the hospital. I spent 5 days in the hospital at that point. They did another upper GI. Noticed there was a blockage. The indicators were that it was cancerous. They didn't know at that time, but they knew that they had to go in and do something. So on June 1st, I went in for an operation. At this point, they didn't know it was cancerous. They'd gotten some results back. And they went over all the scenarios on what could happen. They said, we can go in there and find just a little bit. Depending on how advanced it is, we're going to have to take at least part of your stomach out, probably. Worst case scenario is we have to take your entire stomach out, reroute all your piping in there to make it work. And you'll have to radically adjust your diet and everything else, of course. But they went in, it was close to, I think it was close to an 8-hour surgery. It was all done robotically. In fact, I had 6 holes in my stomach. And one of the things I did was I took a picture of it and posted it online and says, it looks like I got into a gunfight and lost. Because there were just little holes, very painful though. But they did remove half of my stomach. They removed all of the fat tissue around my stomach and intestinal area at that point with 21 lymph nodes. 3 of those did come back cancerous. So it was in stage 3. They caught it at a good point because after a lot of research, usually they don't detect it until late stage 3 or even into stage 4, just because the symptoms can be so minor, indigestion, throwing up on occasion, nothing real major. And I'm not sure, but I think, thankfully, getting the COVID increased the production of that mass in my stomach so that it was found earlier than it could have been.
So
I was very lucky.
So ironic you said that, because when you told the first story about, I didn't realize that you had gone in with COVID first. And,
Yes.
and ironically, when I was thinking about us coming for this talk, I was thinking, okay, life is 10% what happens, 9% how you react to it. He definitely demonstrates that lesson. The other one is everything happens for a purpose and serves me well. And I was thinking, where does that apply in the story? And now you've told us. I mean, like if you hadn't contracted COVID, they may have never found the cancer.
Right. Until it was too late. But I went through the surgery. They provided a plan, 6 months of chemotherapy, possible radiation. We won't know about the radiation until the chemotherapy treatments are all done. But I'm on, it's 12 doses of chemotherapy. I go every other week for 6 months. My final dose will be early December. In fact, after my next treatment, which is on the 13th of September, they'll do a CT scan to compare with the first CT scan, just to make sure that nothing new is developing, to make sure everything's on track the way it should be. But yeah, beyond all that, and the chemotherapy, they told me that as it progresses, that my body might start wearing down and I might start have to modifying a few things. And I do notice when I'm on my treatment week, which this is one of my treatment weeks. In fact, I went in today to have to, well, you've seen my friend that I carry around every other week. It's a little portable pack that administers a 46-hour dose of medicine. And I have to carry it with me. And it's actually into a port in my chest, in my clavicle area. There's they call it a Mediport or a smart port. And they just plug in, they can administer medicine, they can draw blood, do everything they need right from that port. So every other week I carry that for 2 days. But I still come into the dojo and participate.
And that's what I wanted to get at, because you thank you so much for sharing everything you're going through, and you've done it very thoroughly. The part that I really want you to talk about next is you come in, you're laughing, you're joking, you have a great attitude, you do class, you work almost as hard as you worked before. I mean, like, you don't, like, sometimes I come up and I'm like, what, man, take it easy. Well, hey, I mean, like, and so you get a great attitude and a great work ethic and great perseverance through great trials and tribulations. So what can you share with others? I mean, look, I probably wouldn't surprise you to tell you that people with a fraction, going through a fraction of what you're going through, have negative attitudes because of their situation, or quit whatever it is they want to do because of their situation. What advice can you give? What makes you keep a positive attitude? It makes you keep driving on and go and doing what you said you're going to do in spite of the trials and tribulations?
Well, for me, well, I've always been a big kidder anyway, so I like to joke around. I like to have fun. I like to enjoy myself, and I like to bring pleasure to other people. So that's one of the things that drives me. But when I first got it, when they first diagnosed me with the cancer, there was one point, Barbara, my wife, said, "Aren't you worried? Aren't you concerned about what's going to happen?" I'm like, how can I be concerned or worried about something that I don't know anything about? I don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to be fatal? Am I going to live through it? I don't know. But I'm not going to dwell on it either. My philosophy is I'm going to prepare for the worst, plan for the best, prepare for the worst. And that's what I try to do in everything I do. I could very well just sit at home, think, oh, woe is me. Why did this happen to me? Why am I the one that got cancer? Why am I going through this? Or I can choose to live my life as best as I can and say, okay, I've got this. I'm going to beat it. We're going to continue with life. I'm just going to keep on plugging along as best as I can. In fact, when I first started back into training again, there's one time your Barbara actually told you to have me sit out because she looked at me and said, he's going to pass out.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so I went and sat down for a while. And the one things my doctors tell me is to listen to my body. You know my body. I know my body better than anybody else because it's my body. So I know when I'm tired. I know when I'm stressed. I know when I'm, different things are happening. So I can judge what I'm doing or how I'm doing by listening to my body. In fact, last night, there was a time where I had to sit out for just a couple of minutes because I was getting winded and I just needed to rest for a couple minutes.
Yeah, but you just shared such important wisdom a second ago where you said, you just said in passing as part of your story, but and went on to the next part, but you said, you said, I could choose to sit down and go, okay, I got cancer, woe is me, da da da, I'm probably gonna die, da da da. Or I could choose to keep living my life. I'm gonna beat it, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna keep doing everything on the right. And see, I believe, and I think you know this, I think you believe too, that's why you're doing it. But I want to make sure that our listeners heard it. That the very fact that is your choice and that is your attitude and that is your reaction makes it so much more infinitely probable that you are going to beat this thing and it's going to be a story that you tell on the other side than if you were one that chose to sit down and quit and give yourself to defeat.
Oh, absolutely. I believe that wholly. And I think your attitude can have a lot to do with your physicality as well. If you have a good attitude, adversity hits you and you meet it head on and you can maintain a positive attitude, I think your body responds to that in a positive way. Just like the negative, if you down in the dumps and you're, oh, woe is me, why did this happen? Is it going to kill me? Worry about that kind of stuff. Your body reacts to that as well in a negative way. So I think your attitude has a lot to do with your, how your body reacts to different stimuli and different adversities even.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all tied together, right? It's like, your mind controls most everything in your body. So it makes sense that your thoughts, your thoughts control your mind and your mind controls your body. It's no different than when we're teaching somebody to survive a violent confrontation. Do you remember
right.
You remember the first time you did a stress drill and people attacked you with sticks and knives and guns, how differently that felt than now?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Now you could do it relatively calmly because you've prepared for it. And I think that it in the same way, the rest of the training and I, I'm not insinuating it's only our training that gives you an awesome attitude and perseverance, but it is definitely a goal and objective of what we do is to prepare somebody so that if they should go through something like you're going through, they will react in the way that you're reacting.
Right.
Well,
and kudos to you, because I think part of the reason that I am responding so well to treatment and everything is because of the physical activities that I've been enduring over the past 3 years at your hands, because you've kept me going. Everybody there at the dojo is there for each other.
Yeah.
And everybody helps each other. And when somebody's struggling or somebody's wearing down or whatever, they push them and push them and push them to not just to be pushing them, but to get them past that little plateau, as you say, and move on to the next level of endurance that you're going to make.
Yes, sir.
So that aspect, I think, has helped a great deal as well. Just the physicality and keeping active and keeping my body in shape has helped a lot as well. So
I think you are a walking testament to, certainly the subject of this podcast will be life is 10% what happens, 9% how you react to it. And I think that you are a walking testament to what that message is, that lesson is meant to express. In closing, if you could share one last thing, because this will be a legacy project for both of us. This video and podcast. If you wanted to share one last thing with your kids, with the other students at the dojo, with people listening about anything, what would it be?
Never give up. Would be one of the things I would say. Never give up. Even if you feel like giving up, don't. Even if it's something small that you're working towards and you say, oh, this really doesn't matter, I don't need to do this, do it anyway. If not for anybody else, for yourself. You never want to be that quitter. You never want to be the one that says, I could have done it, I didn't do it, and now I regret it. Because the things you don't do, even the small things you don't do, could come back to greatly affect you later in life. You just don't know.
Absolutely.
But you get that quitting attitude, and you're going to continue that attitude as you go forward and keep quitting at bigger and bigger things until all of a sudden your life is gone and you have a lot of regrets. So keep pushing yourself, keep achieving that next goal, and just keep pushing forward. Don't quit.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. As I expected, you have been a wealth of wisdom to everybody. And I really appreciate you making the time. I'm proud of you. Keep up the great work.
Well, thank you, sir. And I appreciate you having me on. And I appreciate you and everything that you've done for us over the years.
Well, thank you, sir.
You are a big influence in our lives.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you back real soon, probably tomorrow night. Right?
Tomorrow night. Yes, sir. We'll be there.
Awesome. Well, I will see you then.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.